à-bas-le-ciel.
I know you've been rather critical of direct action everywhere lately,
Yeah, yeah,
and I understand the reasons that you have for that. But I
yeah,
also have seen, we all saw with Occupy Wall Street, that was another kind of disorganized,
yeah,
everybody felt different things, but they did have an impact. I mean, whether it was just to kind of awaken a certain sense in a gestalt in a certain
yeah,
segment of the population, it can still have its
yeah,
own kind of effectiveness because I think all of us are interested in different things.
yeah.
Some people
Sure.
are more interested in that organized political movement that we're more interested in businesses that are vegan.
Yeah,
And then there's the people who want to just protest something. So, and that
yeah,
there's
yeah.
room for that too, I think.
Well, yeah, there's room. I mean, the great thing about capitalism is there's always room for new ideas. I mean, there are terrible things about capitalism too. But I was in Saskatchewan during the organized Wall Street phenomenon, and I like to compare. There's sort of the politics of the year, the politics of the decade, the politics of the century, the politics of the millennium. And for me, the contrast was between Occupy Wall Street, which came and went in a year, and from my perspective, I think it was a failure. I could say why, but I don't need to say
Yeah.
why.
I was
And
amazed in
yeah,
Edmonton. I lived in Edmonton
right,
at that time, and we had people
right,
sleeping outside
right.
for
Yeah,
six
yeah.
months. It was
Yeah, we had
incredible. I
we had in
can't believe
Saskatchewan too.
doing
Right.
that in Edmonton.
Right. Uh,
Pretty cold there for
right.
anybody who doesn't know that.
Right, but I mean, right next to Occupy Wall Street, we had protests at that time linked to First Nations. I mean, obviously, in Canada, often you do, but at that time in Saskatchewan, in particular, we had a big movement, a big series of rallies. Where it was like, okay, to me, this is the politics of the year, and then over here we have the politics of the century. And the politics of the century, they've been going on for 100 years, and it's still going to be going on 100 years from now. And, to me, this is really important and deep, and people are really, there is high stakes, and people have a lot involved, and what have you. And,
It is
yeah.
like, but like you say, you do need that. You need that couple of percent, and unfortunately, with any movements for Native peoples here in Canada,
Sure.
we just do not have the kind of support that we should
Sure.
have from the general population, and that.
Oh, sure. In Saskatchewan, there was basically one law firm that was crucial to every single First Nations case. And I'm not saying they were a bad law firm, but it was just obvious because I was doing that kind of research. Like, wow, every single case, it's the one lawyer, it's the one law firm. Without that guy, none of this would have happened. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, there are other senses in which the First Nation situation is lamentable. I went to one of those protests with my wife, but at those protests, people would be playing the drums and singing songs, but they don't know any lyrics to the songs in Cree. Language is gone to that extent, where they're making kind of nonsense noises that sound like Cree. But I pointed out to my wife when we were at one of those events. I said, "Look, it sounds like they're singing in Cree, but they're not. It's just chanting sounds." And I myself had seen in the library that type of song. It had lyrics. You know what I mean? Historically, there was a time when this song would have been about something. We're just at the point of the culture and language disappearing. But anyway, for me, this question of the politics of the century, the politics of the millennium, I think whether or not I want veganism to be part of the politics of the century, I think it has to be. I think it's that kind of long-term, slow, movement for cultural change. The sense in which I think the comparison to abolition of alcohol is important is that it does also have this tremendous moral gravitas to it. And I'm tolerant of. I don't drink alcohol myself, but I think human beings are going to drink alcohol. It's always going to be part of our society. But I just mean that movement, the movement to make alcohol illegal, that could have never gone anywhere if it was just based on the number of people. Obviously, it was based on the fact that that small minority had a claim that had cultural resonance and religious significance and moral significance way beyond their numbers. So I think that ultimately has to be the kind of position that veganism is going to play. It's not my choice. I would love it for veganism to be a fast-moving, lightning quick, powerful, political movement.
And that's why I
Yeah.
think that losing so many vegans is a
Yes,
challenge
sure.
because we do. So many people
Sure.
just give up because they feel ostracized and
Sure.
alone, and I think that is part of the challenge, and I think that's one area where YouTube helps a lot, is
Sure.
that at least it gives people the
Right.
chance to talk to other people who
Right.
are vegan, to see people talking, and there's kind of minimal involvement necessary. If you're just
Right.
watching a video on YouTube, it can make you feel better without having to
Sure.
really do
Sure.
that much on your own, although we do want to see people starting to get involved in real world activism.
Sure.
But
Sure. I just mentioned about that. There was a guy here at my school. He's now long gone. I stay here longer than any of the other students, so I see students come, see students go. And he was a jokester. He grew up in Philadelphia. Bit of a rough town. So he knew how to pick a fight. He knew how to joke his way out of a fight. Just that kind of character, which you don't meet that often these days, because these days most people just play video games. So anyway, he was a funny guy and he joked around a lot. And a couple times he pretended he was starting a fist fight with me in the cafeteria here, which he wasn't. But anyway, sort of memorable character. And we only had one serious conversation. But in that conversation, he admitted me to the first time that when he was living in the United States, he was actually living in California, he ate meat only once per month, which, again, is a surprise. Okay, so he's obviously a pretty serious reducitarian. But the next thing he said to me, which, again, he said very seriously, he was uncharacteristically serious as he thought about this, he said, when I become a vegetarian, and then he stopped and he said, I meant to say if I become a vegetarian, it would be for purely political reasons. To me, I completely identify. For me, the difference between being a reducitarian and being a vegan is a political commitment. In terms of another contrasting example, we had a guy here who's ex-military, a lot of muscle on his body, but also a lot of fat, over 50 years old. And he's on all this medication, including for heart condition and blood pressure. Mm-hmm. I saw his diet. I saw him eat every day. I maybe didn't see him 3 meals a day, but 2 meals a day. He ate meat, dairy, and eggs at every meal here. But nevertheless, his meat consumption in China was so much lower than it had been in the United States that he had to stop taking his medication for those conditions, including blood pressure. Yeah. He was cured, and I can't even call his diet reducitarian. He was eating the amount of meat Chinese people, which is a few little scraps of meat, and the rest is rice and vegetables. And I said to him, what the hell do you eat when you're in America? Obviously, cheeseburgers or what have you. So I wish you only got the health benefits when you were 100% vegan, but it's not true. And all those health studies on, the Okinawa Islanders and the different native peoples of the levels, none of them are vegan. They may they have they have lower meat, and even some of the studies from California that talk about vegetarians and vegans who are Seventh-day Adventists. Those guys are not vegan. When you read the fine print, they eat meat once in a while. Those guys, which again, I'm not hating on them, but these are also basically reducitarians. So the commitment to never wear leather shoes, which to me is a very simple, very fundamental thing. I only see people getting there through politics. I either see you getting there through politics or
ethics. Like I'm just curious. Can you define that a little bit? Because to me, it's more of an ethical decision, but you're saying more political.
Well, I was just writing about that in Chinese. I really feel I'm going to try to now write this in Chinese convincingly. But I think if you decide, or if your father decides to quit smoking, it may be for him a private ethical decision. It may even be a religious decision. Some people find religion and quit smoking. I've seen such things. Sure, in that sense, it may be just ethical, or it may be just personal, it may be just a lifestyle choice. But the decision that we should quit smoking, that nobody should quit smoking, that I don't want my daughter to smoke cigarettes, I don't want you to smoke cigarettes, I don't want anyone in our community to smoke cigarettes, that I want to move forward on that social scale. Theoretically, you want everyone in the world to stop smoking, but hey, we're not going to worry about, in Lebanon, we're not trying to get people to quit smoking. We're trying to get fewer people shot. In Syria right now, there are places where smoking's a low priority, where we don't even think of these things. But that's when it must become political. So for me, veganism, every day I eat at the table with people who eat meat. So right now, the total number of students in the school is small. In the past, it comes and goes different times. But let's say there are 7 students in the school. If all 7 of us were vegan, this kitchen would stop buying meat and would stop cooking meat. Yeah. If even one student eats meat, then they buy meat every day and cook meat for the student who eats meat. Right? So sometimes here there have been like two other students who were vegetarian. We've never had any actual vegans here aside from myself. Okay? I have zero impact as long as I'm only one vegan, even though there are only 6 other meat eaters. My impact is still zero. It has to become political, because as soon as we care about outcomes, the ethics in terms of how you feel in your soul, maybe they're meaningful in some sense, but in terms of outcomes, they're completely meaningless. It's only when we move up to this social scale. Now, oddly, in this school, the executive director is vegan. So it's literally true. If all 7 students were vegan, then she would get rid of the meat while we had those 7 students here. We could have 1 month or something with no meat in the school. But if you can't reach that scale of some kind of functional community, the whole school can be vegan, the whole prison can be vegan, the whole workplace can be vegan, your whole apartment building can be vegan or something. It's too much to think of a city being vegan these days. But when it's one person, you never impact outcomes whatsoever. Neither in terms of shoes or what have you.
I've even seen that in my own home, obviously, because when we initially we stopped buying meat, and then it's just been kind of a gradual transition. And my husband finally decided he doesn't want to eat eggs anymore either. So that's the first time, because we stopped buying dairy products a long time ago. But we just finally, so now there's, this is the last carton of eggs, and so that's it's been interesting. And of course now it is different when you get a whole group to commit to something like that. Right. So you are more pragmatic and utilitarian in that sense, yes.
Well, I don't see it as utilitarian, but I mean, for me, taxation obviously has such a clear connection to something like veganism. We didn't make cigarettes illegal; we just raised taxes on them, and taxes communicated a whole moral message and health message and everything else just through a dollar sign. For me, I see no reason why we can't have a 25% tax on leather shoes. And if you want to sweeten it for people, you can have inverse taxation. You can have a 10% discount on all the non-leather shoes. You can make them even cheaper by reallocating some of the money. And again, for me, that communicates a message beyond merely putting money in the government's pocket. It's saying to people, hey, guess what? Now, in 2016, leather is obsolete. You can actually do everything you need without leather. And that's, now some vegans say, isn't that forcing your beliefs on people? We force our beliefs on people every day. That's what politics is. That's the core of politics. The core of politics is we got organized so that we can force our beliefs on you. My beliefs include clean drinking water. And the government has a giant conspiracy to make sure everyone gets clean drinking water. I want you to suffer from my belief that you should be able to turn a tap and get clean drinking water. We're all forcing our beliefs on everyone all the time, and that's politics in a nutshell. Yeah.
À-bas-le-ciel.
From your point of view, what does OG mean?
OG is that person that's been there to look out. That puts you on game, tell you the right or wrong, but not necessarily force it on you. The OG ain't really gonna force nothing on you, but he is gonna tell you, these are the options you got. This is what option A does, this is what option B does. You can make an option C, and if your OG not doing that, he ain't really doing nothing.
À-bas-le-ciel.